Alright, guys, let's talk real quick about the big ousting of James O'Keefe at Project Veritas. Now, I mentioned this last week. I made a video, first video I made, over a month, mentioning Eliza Northland. Obviously, people are covering that constantly. There's a lot of people like Chrissy Mayer, Brittany Venti, all that stuff covering it, the quartering, really, popular YouTubers. Not little channels like mine, but it goes back actually to what is going on at Project Veritas. Now, full disclosure, my wife once worked there for about a year or so, and then she moved on to what she's considered her dream job. In any case, I've met James. I've been around there at the headquarters of Project Veritas for the Christmas party, and I mean, the stuff that they're saying about James being a little bit out of control sounds exaggerated, but also sounds very true, par for the course, if you would. So this idea that he took a sandwich from a pregnant woman, well, I don't know about that, but it is very likely that he did because, well, there was a pregnant woman working for him at one point who I happen to know, actually. And not going to say names, not going to get into the nitty gritty, but it maybe wasn't just James being like, give me that sandwich, right? I doubt that was the case. I doubt that was the case at all. But the way it was set up was he took a sandwich from a pregnant woman after making a donor cry. Well, I've been around James when he's talked to donors, and he is nice to them until they start demanding things of him. James is one of those guys. He doesn't want his picture taken with people. He hates that kind of stuff. He says these kind of things, around. He wants to be the center of attention to some degree, but he doesn't want other people to treat him like he is. It's a weird thing, right? But this is part of that so-called cult of personality. Now, the cult of personality is something that the government generally does. It comes from monarchs becoming basically Ousts, can I say that correctly? Basically being deified, becoming gods themselves, right? And the governments throughout history have always done this. Well, now we live in an age of the personal or celebrity, not the Hollywood celebrity, not the star of, let's say, world star hip hop, or something like that. You're right, not like just a musician or an artist or whatever. We're talking about regular, everyday people breaking into the scenes and becoming the business of me, the business of narcissism, the business of the individual, selling yourself as the product. And when we look at this, we have to think, well, corporations to some degree are government entities, right? And I mean this from a first principle standpoint. They are government entities in that they are groups of individuals who work together. In Project Veritas's particular case, they have a board. Those board members are James O'Keefe's friends. He put them there, right? Supposedly behind the scenes, there's someone who snuck in, all this stuff. I don't know that much inside baseball right now, although I feel like maybe in a week or so, I can maybe give you guys some more information, maybe not even that long, if I hear from certain people. But what I can tell you is that this is really just par for the course. Again, you think that Charlie Kirk is really any different for TPUSA, right? You think that Candace Owens is not like, this like powerhouse who hired a PR firm and whatever else and became very popular very quickly after she switched from being a left-winger to a right-winger? You think she isn't a type A personality like James O'Keefe? But do you actually think that James O'Keefe or Candace Owens is doing all the work? Now, Candace Owens might be doing a lot of her work, but she has plenty of assistants. Project Veritas is way bigger than what you expect, and it ain't James doing all the undercover stuff. He is too popular and too famous to do that. People know who he is. For people like Tim Pool, for instance, to say James O'Keefe is Project Veritas, yes, I've made the same statement, but he isn't. Project Veritas is all the people behind the scenes, and I can tell you, it is a tough place to work for. When my wife worked there, she worked under a certain head, a certain department head, who basically restricted their hours to normal work hours. James does not want that. James, in fact, has lackeys who he takes from other departments where they don't do their jobs and follows him around like some sort of posse, like some sort of entourage, if you would. And that is true. One of those gentlemen had left. I met him. I'm not going to mention his name, but he was one of the people that they, did on the lie detector thing. My wife had left before this, but again, we know people, right? And what I'm telling you is that was true. The mole investigation was true. He did submit people to lie detector tests. Now, again, I watched Tim Pool and what's her name, Hannah Claire, or whatever her name is, was talking about, oh yeah, these people, they just might not be on mission in the job. And it's like, no, you're young, you're single, and you don't have a family. Everybody else, though, they do. They have families and they have lives. You cannot expect people to come into your organization and have the same passion and drive that you do as the creator and organizer. You have to understand how to lead people properly. And leading people is not being an arrogant prick. And it certainly isn't being demanding of your people to an excessive degree. You have to think of troop welfare. And this is something that is lacking today all across the leadership sphere. Now, again, I have mentioned Tim Pool a couple times in this, as I often do, because Tim's really big. He just got caught up in this Morthland scandal with old Eliza. Just took away the articles that Shane Cashman posted because, well, they're nonsense. And Tim was in over his head on this whole thing because he's out of touch. And he doesn't realize that he's out of touch because he's not doing all the groundwork. He's reading articles, he's deciding what he's going to do, he's trying to organize his show, he's making phone calls, and the people who are kind of independent, right, doing their own thing, they're the ones doing the groundwork, right? And Tim isn't with that anymore. And Tim, much like James, is a type A personality. Go watch Adam Krigler's stream about why he left Timcast. Spoiler alert, it was Lydia. But, mind you, he talks about how Tim is. I've been to the Cast Castle. All right. I was not, it was right before the show, whatever, not trying to meet Tim or anything like that, but his staff kind of insisted. We went to the studio and Tim basically kicked us out right away. So, not to talk crap about Tim or anything, but the guy is driven. He's on focus on his mission. And this is a rare quality, my friends. This is a quality of the guy who will work 80 hours a week to become the CEO. This is not your normal person. This is probably less than 10% of people. And James O'Keefe is the same type of person. He is constantly working. And if you've ever been around him when he's not working, and I have, the 2 times I met him, he was not technically working, but he was certainly working. He was always working. He's always doing things for the mission. Do you expect a normal person to do that? So what you have to understand is that in Project Veritas, they have created a cult of personality of James. 100%. There is a work culture there. My wife had to read something like 4 or 5 books in order to join them. She had to read the books that James had published, ghost written, and all that kind of stuff, right? She had to read about, the history of the kind of journalism that he does and the expectations in their culture. And any kind of corporate culture does this. This, again, is going toward creating that cult of personality. But who becomes the cult of personality? Well, it's always that type A person. It's always that person they can prop up as being whatever. So do I believe that James O'Keefe is some evil, crazy guy? Let's put it this way. I defended him a while back when the Daily Beast had a former employee of his, who, again, I will not mention names, but I know had done some unethical things, such as, trying to sell their donors on their spouse's business. Which isn't ethical, folks. You're calling for your job, not for something else. But in any case, and I honestly don't think that person did that on purpose. I don't really know. I think they were just incompetent and didn't know any better. But regardless, that person said that they were having wild sex orgies and all kinds of other stuff. Nonsense. But what happened with the board recently, and talking about how people are overworked, how O'Keefe can be a megalomaniac? Sure. And I keep telling you this stuff. I keep telling you, you have to understand, mask off the reality of this world. Like, these people aren't just like your regular everyday Joes, right? They're not some guy. Like, you meet me in person, I'm on here on stream. You know, I do a stream, or I'm recording a video now, or whatever. I'm very talkative. I'm not an extrovert at all, actually. I'm an introvert. And when I'm around a lot of people, I tend to be very quiet and observe a lot. The reason why I'm so talkative is because I read and think all the time. And I have things to say, things to address. And I do what I do because regardless of fame, which I'm not really pushing for, I don't really want that because fame brings a whole slew of issues with it. But regardless of that thing, you know, I feel compelled to say things that other people aren't addressing, and they're not addressing appropriately. And I see a lot of echoing of things often that need to be more sussed out. So the reason why someone, you know, kind of going back to the last video, like Eliza Morthland can come up on the interwebs, and many other personality types, right, is because they're willing to work so hard to make themselves famous and get themselves out there and do the thing. You know, again, going back to Tim Pool, he often will talk about how he was willing to be homeless, right? Most of you aren't. Most of you are not willing to be just uncomforted in order to get ahead in life. For me, I am certainly willing, but I have other people in my life. You know, I have an 18, almost 19-year-old, you know, that I've had to take care of, had full custody of for a very long time. And that has limited me in my ability to get uncomfortable because, well, I can't not expect her fully to you know, enjoy with that. And plus, then there was the whole situation with custody and her mother, you know, visitation, all that stuff. So it's like, you know, there are limitations on life. There are limitations to what you can and cannot do. For Eliza, she comes from wealth. Her father has money. She's been doing all this stuff, doing whatever she wants, been in and out for years, has whatever connections, and she's a person who has a little, you know, a screw loose. For someone like James, well, James is very egotistical. You meet James right off the bat. First time I met James, stuck out his hand. James O'Keefe, like he was James Bond or something. I'm like, yeah, I know exactly who you are. Sat down right beside me. It's like, James O'Keefe. And I was sitting, he was to my left, and to the right was my wife, which, of course, he knew as his employee. But, you know, just the way that people present themselves, right, to you, and I mean privately, personally, can say a lot. The way you see James in the videos, how he confronts people, it says a lot about his personality, right? And again, you talk about, like, again, going back to Tim Pool, because these things are kind of all interrelated. And I'm talking about Tim too because he was defending James so much. You think Tim is not like a prick sometimes to his staff? Mind you, you know, when I first started streaming 2 years ago or more now, 3 years ago, whatever it was, you know, I had someone I was trying to work with, a friend of mine, didn't work out. Maybe I was a little bit of a prick to him when I cut it off, but more or less, he knew me. He hung out with me all the time. He had moved away, and we were trying to do the thing like remotely, and he just was not keeping up with the schedule. And I was like, dude, I can't work with you like you ought to know better to know that I do not deal with stuff like this, because I don't. I'm kind of a no-nonsense kind of guy. When there's nonsense, I cut it off. And these people that run these companies, they're sort of like that, but it has nothing to do with whether it's nonsense or not. It has to do with what they want. What they want done, they want it to be done. And if it's not done, then they will replace you. They will get rid of you. They will do whatever. In the case of Tim Pool, Tim was in over his head, according to Adam Krigler. He didn't have NDA set up. I mean, that's crazy, but I get it. You know, he's starting from scratch, doing whatever, trying to run his business. You know, he's got family members who are suing him. He's got former employees that are suing him on some crazy venture, and that's a whole nother thing. If you remember, what was the little side venture that Tim did? There was another news organization that kind of Subverse that kind of went under. Yeah. Lots of stuff there, guys. But in the end, understand this. These people, right? They are not out there being perfectly benevolent individuals, right, running these companies. They are there for a bottom line. And unless they have actual leadership training and care about that leadership, right, and care about the people that they take care of, what they care about is their bottom line. Now, see, a good leader, a truly good leader, understands that that bottom line doesn't matter if you have good morale, because your people will walk to the edges of the earth for you if the morale is good. There are two things that the Marine Corps teaches in leadership that are very important. First is mission accomplishment. Mission must always be accomplishment. And the second is troop welfare. If the mission is accomplished, then the troop welfare takes priority. And in that case, in most corporate settings, that, my friends, is pretty freaking easy. And that's what's going on with Project Veritas right now. There is a lack of troop welfare. But that's all I have for today, folks. This has been All Minus One. My name is Bill, and I wish you all well.